What's up, fam? Extraordinary Life with Elijah, and you're watching this video on Sunday, July 21st, 2024 at 10:50 a.m. MST. I've been thinking a lot about how God prepares us for things when we often aren't thinking about His preparation of us. That sometimes it can feel like we're just spinning our wheels, going around in circles, not doing really anything, but God never lets anything fall to the ground. So when I think about back as a kid, when I was growing up, I had this strange habit of just talking out loud to people. I had a super active imagination and would envision all kinds of different circumstances and situations that I was in, talking to different people. Fortunately, I never talked back, so pro there, but I would just always be by myself and have these super intense times of what I considered imagination with all kinds of people and all different kinds of circumstances were very real. And continued on even into adulthood, in that I very often, as I'm going through life, that I'm often driving or traveling around from one place to another, and I'm just preaching and teaching to my windshield, but it's always in the context of numerous people, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands of people that I'm speaking to, and teach entire messages and explain things and expound upon things. And I've been doing that ever since I was a little kid. I think the cool aspect about that is that even as a kid, clear back in the 80s, back before the internet even existed, that God was preparing me for this context. That a big part of making videos is being able to speak directly to you with intention, having you in mind, and creating a connection with you on the other side of the screen to communicate ideas. That's kind of the basis of a YouTube context. But God was building into me the capacity to be able to do that comfortably long before the internet even existed. So now within Extraordinary Life with Elijah, it's something that's very easy for me to do. As I think about those aspects of Extraordinary Life with Elijah and my heart to pursue all of the people in the world, to reach out and to let the light of my good works so shine such that men could see my good works and glorify my Father in heaven. Obviously, the end goal is to press into areas of life that are being held captive, people whose lives are in bondage in either sin or darkness or whatever, and to help break through those things. I think specifically within the area of just the family of believers, and to break through a lot of the larger areas of strongholds that exist within our lives that cause us not to interact well. That says that we've been given weapons to cast down those pretensions of knowledge that set themselves up against the knowledge of God. So press into those strongholds and see strongholds torn down. Within that, I think continuing on, just being encouraged by the person of Joshua and just everything that God did in His people throughout, that's recorded in the book of Joshua. I think it's so instructive that as the people start breaking into the promised land, that they come up against Jericho. They don't know how to get through that stronghold and to break into the environment of abundant life that God has for them. But God tells them to just walk in circles round and round Jericho, not saying anything, not really doing anything other than just walking in circles for days at a time. Hello there, ma'am. it doesn't seem to make much sense for them. Not sure what walking round and round a huge stronghold not saying anything is gonna do, but well, God, we trust you. It says that after 7 days of walking, 6 days of walking around the city, on the seventh day walking around the city 7 times and lifting up a mighty shout, that the walls of Jericho fell. I think specifically how that encourages me is that God used what his people had been doing for years, wandering around in circles in the desert, seemingly meaningless, just people dying on all sides, and when God would move, they would move, and just wandering around in the desert for 40 years doesn't seem like it's accomplishing much, but that God used the very thing that had been a result of discipline for them to overcome the stronghold of Jericho. If you think about it, the fact that they had been walking around in the desert for 40 years, just walking from place to place and really walking around in the desert doing things that didn't make any sense, that after 40 years of just walking in circles and obeying God's voice, by the time they got to Jericho, walking in circles around a city once a day is not that hard. God had transformed them into being super power walkers. Like power walking, you don't understand power walking until you've trained in the desert for 40 years, just walking in circles, doing nothing. However, God used that specific capacity with his people to overcome an entire stronghold. I really see how that plays out in my own life, in that God has been building the capacity in me to talk circles around things for seemingly no reason for years and years, in the silence of just doing it with him, to keep going round and round topics, coming up from the side, coming from the top, and that eventually there's going to be the time when old Elijah Pup shouts and strongholds are going to come down. I find that all sorts of encouraging because God, he redeems things. And so the very thing that his people were doing that was an example of their discipline from God, God used that strength of them becoming power walkers in the desert, following around for who knows what, that they didn't know why they were following around other than that they were dying off in the desert due to their rebellion, but that God used that discipline as the very basis of him overcoming the stronghold. I hope that makes sense. So wherever you are in your life right now, that if you've come through a season of 40 years of walking in the desert and you're wondering how you're going to take on the things that God has before you, and you don't have the necessary skills to go toe to toe with the armies and enemies that are inside those strongholds, rest in the fact that God has built into you the necessary strength and tools to be able to listen to his voice and to do exactly what he says. Take it from me, a guy who has been circling topics for 3.5 years, just round and round and round and round, and making videos and posting them to no one in particular, just because God asks me to release them to you here, and then saying like, man, I don't know what it's going to do in this time and space, but God, I believe you for what you've said, and I will exercise the strength that you have built into me since I was a little kid. So that's the beauty of what my dad does, that even while you don't even know that you're being trained, that I was being trained for a context to thrive within very easily. It's just what I do naturally, normally, and super easy, that I was being trained for this context before the platform that I was to release it into even existed. That didn't exist back at the beginning of 1980. And if it did, I was too young to know that it was there. So cool. Oh man, my dad is the best. So out of the testimony of my father's goodness to me, I want to bless you in your forward advance. Wherever you are, whatever God's got you doing, He's building the tools into you. He's building the strength into you. Not only just for you to survive within the context that He has for you, but to thrive. If you subscribe to what I am doing, hit the button, hit it, and then get it. Hit the bell as well so you get notified with the new content, with the new content. And if you loved this video, you didn't just like it, hit the thumbs down button. Pray blessings on our lives together. I love you guys lots, and I will see you in the next video. Yep, you know the drill. I think it's so silly that God has been building this capacity into me ever since I was a little kid. For sure before YouTube existed, but I think for sure, I don't know, maybe I should look back on Wikipedia and find out when the internet was created, but pretty sure that He was building this capacity into me before the internet existed. Oh, He's so good. Blessings on wherever you're at, whatever stage God has you in. He's building excellence into you, my friends. Let's see. What's up, fam? Extraordinary Life with Elijah. And I think this week, Kailani is my extra, and I am the ordinary. I was having lunch with the girls here